This is the Digital DJ Tips review of the Numark NS4FX 4-channel Serato DJ controller. In this review, I'm going to talk you through every aspect of it, the jogs, the pads, how the EQs and the effects work. We're going to look at the inputs and outputs on the device, and we're going to talk about who it's useful for, what it's doing in the market. You know, to all intents and purposes, this is pretty much like the Numark Mixed Track Platinum FX, but a 4-channel version. However, as we're about to see, there is a little bit more to it than that, and that makes it actually more useful than just a 4-channel version of that. We're going to look at what it compares to in the market and the gap we think it fits. As ever, if you like what you see here, we'd love you to become our latest member. You get a free copy of our book and our gear guide. Go to that URL underneath in order to do that. So it is a 4-channel controller designed for Serato DJ. It's actually deeper, wider and longer than the Numark Mixed Track Platinum FX, which is the controller that it's closest to, in order to accommodate the 4 channels, but also it just feels a little bit more substantial. It needs mains power, which is something that the lower down controllers from Numark don't. That's good, because it gives you much brighter controls. It's really nice and bright, and it's going to shine through if you're DJing in sunshine and so on, in a way that the other controllers that don't have the mains power and that get their power from the USB sometimes struggle with. Also, it means it's going to have better quality, louder audio. It's actually very, very similar to those controllers. There is a few style differences compared to the other controllers in the range. I mean, it's grey rather than black like the Platinum FX. The pads are lit in white instead of the kind of red color, I believe, from memory, that the other ones are. But basically, you're getting the same look and feel, a lot of the same components and so on. It's got 3-band EQ with level meters and filters for each of the 4 channels. It's got paddle effects, which have got some reasonable control over the effects here, although you can't change the effects that are selected. However, they are pretty good as far as control goes. You get a tap button, which is useful for matching up to BPMs and so on. We'll show you the effects in a little while. But the biggest thing is the better inputs and outputs. There's a booth output as well as a master output. And there's a microphone input, which is also an auxiliary, and a second microphone input on the front, which is good thinking for a €499 and dollar and £415 controller. Even though it only comes with Serato DJ Lite, which is good enough to get you going, but you will want to upgrade to Serato DJ Pro, which will be an extra $99, which does have to be factored into the price here. Even when you're looking at that, this is pretty good value, and it's definitely filling a gap in the market, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. Okay, so that is an introduction to the controller. Let's take a look at what it can do. So to start with, let's talk about the jog wheels. The jog wheels are really nice. They're nicely weighted. They just have always felt nice on these controllers. Yeah, they're not as big as some others, but hey, they're fine. They're really something that I think you will enjoy using. You can scratch on them fine. They're just good. They're just nice jog wheels. The usual nudge around the edge, the usual scratch on the top, which can be turned on or off with this button here if you just prefer it to be a CDJ style jog wheel. And of course, the main thing is this big display in the middle, which gives you not only the marker point as to where you currently are on the track with these red blocks really, but they kind of combine to make a ring around here. But also this is showing you how far through the track you are. You've got your BPM here. You've also got the key and the percentage up or down, plus also where the pitch is set as well. So it's a really nice second display to have, to save you having to look all the time at your computer for these kind of basic things. The effects in the center here, you press it up to turn the effect on, and you put it down to turn the effect off, and then you use this to alter the amount of the effect you get, and this to alter how quickly the effect cycles. Now, these are really intuitive to use, and having these controls here actually makes these pretty good. One thing I didn't like about this is that the high pass and low pass filter are not the LFO filters. That's just on. And you have to use this to control it, so it's not cycling like you would expect it would on here, because otherwise what these are doing is basically duplicating what these effects do. It's a small thing, but worth pointing out. However, overall, the way the effects are done is a good mix of accessibility and power. You can only have one effect going at any one time, so if there's an effect on this channel, it's going to be the same one you're using over on this channel, or indeed the other channels. So let's talk about the other channels. How do you switch layers? Because you've got 4 mixer controls, but you've only got 2 decks. Well, this is the way it's always done on devices like this, with a button that's called the layer button. And this is switching between the 2 decks, which are controlled on this side, deck 1 and deck 3. And in the software, you can see as I press that button, it's switching. The blue line on the left-hand side that's surrounding the decks is showing you which one you're controlling there. It can be a little bit fiddly controlling your decks this way, but it is the way it's done on decks that don't have literally 4 physical decks, which is all of them, until you're getting up to the many thousands of pounds. So that's how the 4 deck thing works. The overall controls are really nice. You've got lovely long tempo faders. These have got a nice bit of tension on them. Big filters. These controls are fine. Good browse button for moving through your library here and for loading tracks. So no complaints with that. The only control that I would say feels a little bit cheap is the crossfader. There's nothing wrong with it, but we're getting a little bit bigger now than controllers like this one here. And therefore, at that price point, you're just starting to think, I might quite like a nicer crossfader. But that's kind of the only thing I would say. Now, the other thing I would say is that the pads are only lit on or off in white. They're not RGB, and that does make it a little bit more complicated to figure out what's going on, because on the software your pads are lit up. If you look at the top left of the screen here, your pads can be colored, which is really useful. However, when you move back to here, the colors don't show on here. I don't know why they don't do that, because it would cost so much little extra, you know, to get an RGB compared to a 1 color LED in there. I'm not really sure why they do that. Anyway, here we have our cue points for playing the track from set cue points. We have auto loop, which turns on or off the auto loop function like this. Fader cuts is basically like a transform effect. It'll cut the track on or off. Which can be quite useful. It can be quite nice on acapellas and so on. You've got access to your sampler here as well. And then assuming you're using Serato DJ Pro, holding down Shift will give you other options like pitch play. Lets you move up or down on the selected cue point to play with the pitch of it. Roll, which is like a slip roll. There's no separate slip button on here, but slip roll is a good function for basically doing a little loop roll but continue where you would have been on the track otherwise. Slicer, which just slices up a section of the track and lets you play with it on the pads. And then scratch bank, which is a nice thing to have if you are a DJ that likes to basically scratch but then jump back to where you were before. It's a nice feature that was added to Serato on its more complex gear, on its more expensive gear, and it's now trickled down to here, so it's good to see that in there. So as well as that, we have a standalone separate loop, and I really like this. This isn't often the case on controllers. When they've got the loops on the pads, they sometimes don't put the loops down here, but this has got looping down here, so you can turn the loop on and double and half the loop length on here as well. So top marks for that. Overall, to use it, I've got no complaints. It's a nice, for the money, it's really good value, and it does pretty much most things well. We'll come on to what I think it does well and doesn't do well in a second when we conclude. But first, I want to talk you through the inputs and outputs on this, because they're a big part of this and the way this works. So around the back of the unit, to start off with, on-off button and the power, you've got a useful little power grip there to grip the cable to stop it pulling out. Again, a nice little pro feature. This is heading off to the computer. You've got balanced booth outputs, 24-bit audio and balanced booth outputs, which means you can send a really nice, loud, strong, good quality signal to a PA system. Love that. Also got an unbalanced output here. This is also going to be useful if you're a live streamer and you want to send the audio off to another application to live stream and have your monitoring. Although I'm going to talk to you about a really cool live streaming feature that's built into this in a second as well. So moving along to this side, we've got an input here for a auxiliary, so you could plug in a backup DJ, a backup music source in case you have issues with your computer or whatever. And then we have a microphone socket here. Now it's only a standard TRS 1/4 inch microphone socket, but hey, you've got a microphone socket there. And what's really nice is that around the front of the unit, we have another microphone socket here. This one, just like the other one, has a level and a tone control. They both have tone controls, which is unusual again at this price point. So 2 microphones. useful for mobile DJs. Balanced outputs I've just shown you, useful for mobile DJs. We'll come back to that thought. Here we have our crossfader assign, so you can have the crossfader assign left or right for all the different inputs, or just bypass that completely if that's not your thing. And then we have headphones 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch inputs here. Okay, so what are the pluses and minuses of this unit? Well, firstly, there is a lot to love here. I much prefer it, for instance, to the Pioneer DJing Flex 6, which is a bigger controller. It's got big jog wheels that look much more like club jog wheels, and it's also a Serato controller, but really this does a lot of things better than that. Much better inputs, much better outputs. It's just a highly specified controller when compared to the Flex 6, even though the Flex 6 kind of arguably looks nicer than this. So in this mid-range Serato controller area, there's actually very few to pick from, and this is, I think, filling a gap there for a mid-range 4-channel controller. The inputs and outputs mean that it is easily good enough to be used for mobile DJ use, especially with the 24-bit audio. No, you probably wouldn't use it as your only professional controller if you were a full-timer, but for playing at parties, in public, bars, lounges, and the odd wedding and so on, I think this will do fine. It's certainly fine as a backup unit for that kind of DJ. So if it's good enough for a backup, for some DJs, it will be all you need. But also, one thing I've got to tell you about that I totally love about this, because live streaming is so important to us all nowadays, isn't it, right? We're all dabbling in it, or we want to. This has got a really nice function, because what this does is take the 2 microphone inputs here and the one around the front, and it feeds them down the USB cable to your computer. So Serato has this cool way, and it works with all DJ software, but they've got some stuff in the settings just to make it a little bit easier. They've got this cool way of letting you have your audio not only play on the computer if you want that to be the case by using your laptop speakers, but also available to other applications. And then in the computer, you can use something like OBS to live stream the whole lot to the internet. And that means you can plug a microphone in here or an auxiliary input, and basically everything you do on here gets broadcast as part of your live stream. Most DJ controllers, if not all, don't do that. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, just a few of the downsides. I don't really think the crossfader is brilliant, but it's fine. It's not going to fail you or anything. It just doesn't feel that great. The RGB lacking here, I'd love to have seen that. And monitoring the VU meters, you've just got 2 tiny meters here, and you can't monitor where your level is set. You should be able to press the Q button and see your levels on here, and then when you turn the Q button off, you go back to the master levels on here. That's the way it's done on a lot of DJ gear. It's not done on here, and what that means is you lose a VU meter for your level. You can work around it. It's quite a forgiving controller, and Serato is quite forgiving as far as your levels are concerned, but I would like to have seen a way of having the meters work on both Q and master output. So overall then, this is a great value device. It's a real step up from the equally good value Numark Mixtrack Platinum FX. You're going to get 4 channels, much better inputs and outputs. They've got a good choice of features here for the DJ that wants a little bit more than a budget entry-level controller and has got a little bit more ambition to play in public and so on. It's good for home use, of course. It's good for parties, and it's good for pro use as a backup controller. And at a push, for your first few professional gigs, I think you could get away with this, and some people will stick with it for a lot longer than that. We really like it. It's a Numark NS4FX, $499 in euros, £415. And that's our review of it. There's a full written version of this over on the Digital DJ Tips website, so do go check that out there. Any questions, please ask us underneath. And if you've enjoyed this, as ever, come join. We are the #1 DJ school to help you become a better DJ or DJ producer. You not only get a copy of our book when you join and our gear guide, but more importantly, you get our weekly Tuesday Tips email, which is the email to receive if you want to improve your DJing and your DJ production, because it's full of free lessons, tutorials, reviews, mixes from our tutors like Layback Luke, Jazzy Jeff, DJ Angelo, and others, and basically a great thing to have in your inbox to help you become a better DJ, get more inspired and have more fun with all of this. That's it. This is Phil at Digital DJ Tips saying thank you for watching, and we'll see you with another gear review very soon.